Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, and wow, what a busy day it's already been in the true crime world. First off, thank you for being here. Let's bring the true crime family back together and do me a solid. Hit the subscribe button right now and ring the bell so that you can be alerted of live events like this. And we're going to talk about big moments in court today, including that big moment in the state of Hawaii, where the anesthesiologist is on trial for attempted murder of his wife, Arielle. This happened a year ago today. This is the anniversary of that. This is also her birthday, and she's facing her estranged husband in court. Let me show you what the courtroom looks like there in Hawaii. We're going to see this defendant walking in this scene right here. This is how he presented himself today, shaking the hands of his attorneys. He's in custody. He was denied bail or bond, and taking a seat right there. He's going to be putting on that blazer, presenting very nicely in front of his jury there. And as you know, he is cloaked in the presumption of innocence. And the jury, they're not allowed to see him in shackles or anything like that, because that could be prejudicial. But this guy right here, he's facing a lot of charges, and we're going to watch together part of this direct testimony and then the cross of his estranged wife, Arielle. Let me get that together for you right here. We have her walking in, and then it's going to be off the gate. Let's see. We are going to share this screen. Let me know in the comments below what you actually think about this case. It has been one that has really rocked the true crime community. It's been all over the headlines. It is one that really kind of hit the chord with a lot of people because it has a lot of issues with it, right? Domestic violence being one of them, and terrible, terrible allegations. But let's watch some of this together and let me know what you think about the case.
Please raise your right hand.
You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do.
Please have a seat. Mr. Garner, whenever you're ready. Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, before we get any further, first thing I'm asking you to do is kind of sit as close as you can as to the microphone,
Okay.
and then speak into the microphone as much as you can today, okay?
Okay.
All right. Can you please state your name?
My name is Arielle Konig.
And Arielle, what do you do for work?
I am a project manager for TerraPower.
What does TerraPower do?
TerraPower is a nuclear innovation company.
Okay. When you say nuclear innovation, what do you mean?
We're designing an advanced reactor to deploy to replace retiring coal plants.
And what do you actually do at TerraPower?
I work on the fuel supply.
And Arielle, where do you live?
I live on Maui
Okay. Where on Maui?
in Kahului.
Is that 19 Pu'uehu Place?
That's correct.
Who do you live with?
I live with my children.
Which children?
I have two little kids and then my stepson.
How long have you been living on Maui?
Just over 3 years now.
Arielle, are you currently married?
Yes, I am.
Who are you currently married to?
Gerhardt Konig.
As of March 24th, 2025, how long have you been married to Gerhardt Konig?
About 6.5 years.
Okay, as of that date, 1 year ago today, how long had you been in a relationship with him?
Would have been about 9 years then.
When did you first meet Gerhardt Konig?
We met in the spring of 2016.
And you mentioned you have some children. Do you have any children with Gerhardt?
Yes, I have two children with Gerhardt.
How old are those children?
They are 5 and 3.
If you were to see Gerhardt again, would you recognize him?
Yes.
Could you stipulate to identification, Your Honor? Okay. Stipulation accepted. It will reflect that there's identification by Mrs. Konig.
I'll skip ahead a little bit.
Just going to pause it right there. I mean, it's always powerful when you have that moment in court where the alleged victim, which is the estranged wife in this case, points out at that defense table and says, that's the person that did it to me. It's always really powerful, and it really draws the eye of all of the jurors. Remember, I have crisscrossed this country for you when I worked for Court TV, covering the biggest trials in the country. And I was always laser focused on how the jury was taking it all in. And I bet you right now that they are glued to this testimony and this alleged witness, because it comes down to this. Do you believe her or do you believe his side of the story? And you can bet he is going to take the stand. He has to take the stand to defend himself of these allegations. So right now, you just had the defense stipulate to, yes, that's him at the defense table, so that she doesn't have that opportunity to point at him. So let's continue watching.
Arielle, I'm going to ask you about an incident from March 24th, 2025, around 10 o'clock a.m. Do you remember that incident?
Yes, I do.
Where were you going that morning?
Gerhardt and I were going to a hike on the Polypuka Trail.
And so, where is that hike again?
The Polypuka Trail?
Is that on the island of Oahu?
Yes, it is.
Why were you and the defendant on the island of Oahu on March 24th, 2025?
We came to Oahu to celebrate my birthday.
And when is your birthday?
My birthday is March 24th.
Okay. When did you actually arrive on Oahu?
We got here March 23rd, the day before,
And when were you scheduled to leave?
on the 25th.
And you said March 24th was your birthday. I'm going to approach now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 133, previously shown to defense counsel. 133.
State function.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, Arielle, I've just handed you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 133. Do you recognize what I've just handed you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what is this?
All right, I'm going to pause the video right there, because what do you think is going through this defendant's mind? I see a lot of you in the chat. I just wanted to make sure that I said hello to you. Hi, True Crime fam. Thanks for being with me for True Crime and Justice with Matt Johnson. We're going to live stream special events like today, which is the face-to-face with this alleged victim in this this alleged, trying to throw her off the cliff on her birthday because he was in a jealous rage over her affair that he was accusing her of. But we have the alleged victim in all of this in court today. She was supposed to testify on last Friday, but there was some evidentiary issues as to what she can testify to and what could be brought into the case before this jury. So, wow. He's not really looking at her a whole lot from the camera angles that we can see. Let me know what you think of the trial so far.
This is a birthday card that Gerhardt gave me last year.
And when did the defendant give you that birthday card?
It was in the morning. We were at our hotel getting ready to leave for breakfast and then for the hike, and gave me a present in this card.
Does this photograph fairly and accurately depict the birthday card the defendant gave you on March 24th, 2025?
Yes, it does.
Okay, at this point, the state will move State's Exhibit 133 into evidence.
Mr. Okay. No objection. What has been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 133 is received into evidence.
I'm going to publish now what's been marked as State's Exhibit 133. Arielle, how did you feel when you got this card?
Hopeful. I was I teared up when I read it. I thought it was really sweet. And we were coming off of a hard season. So, I felt hopeful that this was a turning point for us in our marriage and that this was going to be a nice trip and kind of started the next chapter for us.
Okay. I'll come back to what you just mentioned there a little bit later.
Sure.
But could you walk us, and I'm going to take down State's Exhibit 133, and I'm going to retrieve it from you now.
So this is key, right? Because this is part of the state's case in what they're saying is him luring her to the trail, right? Because they're planning on premeditation, and that's what they're saying in their opening statements, that he had planned on murdering his wife. He had booked all the travel, booked the excursions, and planned to go on that very high trail with her, with the intention to hurt or kill her. So that's really key, because that leads into the premeditation as to what they're going to say to the jury in closing arguments. Just watch. They're going to say that. All right, let's get back to some of the testimony here. Let's actually move ahead a bit.
Because I was just uneasy that close to the edge. And we did take a selfie, but I held on to that tree.
So now they're at the trail.
Do you still have access to that selfie?
I don't.
What happened after you took the selfie while you were holding onto the tree?
I just asked him to move down the trail a little bit so that I could get past without having to go near the cliff.
And then how did the defendant react to that?
He was a little like, okay, and then he moved a few paces away.
Uh, what did you?
So he was then facing me and the cliff, and I walked up to him. And again, we were just, everything was normal. I walked up and just kind of like brushed my hands against his shoulders, like kind of like a little hug.
Okay. As you had your hands against his shoulders, where was the defendant facing?
He was facing the cliff, facing me. My back was to the cliff, and he's facing me at the cliff.
And how far behind you was the cliff?
Feet, 10 or less.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that.
10 or less feet.
All right. So, okay. After this happens, after you get to where the defendant is on the trail, what happened next?
When I walk up to him, then he grabbed me really forcefully by my upper arms, and he said, "I'm so fucking sick of this shit. Get back over there." And he starts pushing me back towards the cliff.
Can you imagine if you're in her shoes right now, having to relive this event? Can you imagine having to have lived through it for the first time? And then her discussion with him in how she says that she saved her life is really dramatic, and it's really kind of hard to hear. So if you're just tuning in, thank you for being here. This is the trial against the anesthesiologist in Hawaii. He is in custody. He has a jury trial. This is a criminal case against Dr. Gerhardt Konig. And right now, his estranged wife, Arielle Konig, is testifying on her birthday. This is 1 year ago to the day that this happened, this alleged incident, where she alleges that he tried to throw her off of a cliff and then stab her or inject her with some sort of medication in an attempt to kill her. She's on the stand. She's facing her alleged killer right there, her would-be killer, and we're watching it together. So let me know what you think.
The defendant was grabbing you and pushing you. What did you do?
I was surprised. It felt almost like he was kidding at first, and I was like, "What are you doing?" But he had grabbed me really hard and was moving me. So we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground. He had grabbed me really hard and was moving me. So we kind of wrestled a little bit, and I threw myself onto the ground because there's a lot of trees and shrubs there so that I could hold on.
As you threw yourself to the ground, how did the defendant respond?
Well, he got on top of me, and he was kind of trying to pull me, and we're wrestling, and he ended up straddling me. So he had his legs on either side, kind of across my waist.
On March 24, 2025, how tall were you?
About 5'6".
And how much did you weigh on that date?
About 145 pounds.
Okay. And on that date, how tall was the defendant?
About 5'10",
And how much should he weigh?
maybe 165 pounds.
Okay, and then you said straddling. Can you describe what that looked like for us?
Sure, I'm laying on my back and he's on top of me with kind of like one leg on either side across my waist, facing me.
Once the defendant was on top of you, what did he do next?
So he was first trying to pull me, try to get me closer to the cliff. And again, I could kind of hold on to the roots and stuff that were around us. And then he had a backpack that he was hiking with. And he, like I said, he's on top of me. And he had a syringe in his hand. And he says, hold still. And I see the syringe and I just kind of like bat it away from us both.
Okay. When you first saw that syringe in his hand, did you actually see where it came from?
I didn't see where it came from, though.
All right, and you said you were able to bat it. Do you know where it went?
It just fell on the ground sort of near us. It would have been to my left because I could still kind of see it in my periphery. So I was trying to make sure it wasn't going to get grabbed again.
And then could you describe what you remember about the syringe, what it looked like?
Sure. It was a clear syringe with a blue piece, maybe blue plunger, I guess is what that's called.
Now, this is also very key, right? But his defense is going to say that there was no syringe ever found on the trail or near her person or near him or on him. That was part of the things that they were saying in open court and during some of the pretrial hearings. What the state has in evidence to all that, we'll find out. But it's really key what she's talking about right now, because again, we established the trip, how he got her on the trip, the premeditation, allegedly, and now what he's doing on this trail where she's in fear of her life. So already, you know, they're on this really steep cliff, more than 1,000 feet high, and she's grabbing onto the tree, and then now this whole syringe business. So let's continue to watch.
Once you were able to bat the syringe away onto the ground, what did the defendant do next?
So he had taken his backpack off and it was on the ground to his left, so kind of to the right side of my body here. And he was digging in that with his left hand and then kind of holding me down with his right hand. And I'm screaming and I'm saying, what the fuck are you doing? Get off me. And he's saying like, fuck you, you're done. I'm so sick of your shit, so done with you. And I'm trying to kind of protect myself and get out of there. But also he's gripping his hand closed really hard. And there's a vial in his hand. So I was trying to pry his hand open so I could grab that vial out.
Okay. Which hand did you see the vial in?
The vial was in his right hand.
Okay. And did you actually get to see the entire vial?
No.
Okay. What part of it did you see?
I could see pieces of it because I'm trying to like pry his fingers off of it so that I can grab it and throw it.
Were you able to open his hand that was holding the vial?
Not enough to get the vial away.
All right. You mentioned the defendant was saying some things. Can you tell us what you remember he said as he was on top of you?
Yeah. I'm screaming and he's telling me, shut the fuck up. Nobody's going to hear you out here. Nobody's coming to save you. And I'm saying like, you can't do this. Everyone knows we're on a hike. They'll know this wasn't an accident and our kids will be orphans. You'll go to jail and I'll be dead. Like, you have to stop. And again, he's saying like, you're done. We're done with you. We don't need you anymore. You're done. You're done.
Did telling the defendant any of these things that you told him, did that get him to stop?
No, not really. And I had said like, your mom just sent me a really beautiful text for my birthday. Like, your family will be upset if I die. He can't face our kids after this, you know. And he did seem at that point to like calm down a little bit. Like, it seemed like he took a deep breath and calmed down. And so I had this moment where I was like, okay, this is the break, like I can get out. And then he just starts hitting me with a rock.
I'm going to backtrack for just a moment, Arielle. As the defendant was on top of you, as the defendant was saying things, and as you were,
I'm going to pause it right here so that we can talk about it, and I'll get into the chat also.
Physically at all?
Okay. Wow. So there's a lot right there, right? First off, I'm so impressed with how this witness is holding it together. She's a mom, and she's having to tell the father of her children, you know, our kids, our kids, our kids. And, you know, again, these are all allegations, but it's her testimony, and how she was talking about the mother-in-law, and how she's saying, you know, everyone's going to be upset if I'm dead, and just the rage in him, and him saying, you know, we are done with you. We don't need you anymore. It is just mind-boggling and mind-blowing, this whole testimony right here. And this could be the exact testimony that the state needs to lock this guy up. Let me read some of the comments here. And also, what do you make of her demeanor? She's really holding it together really well. She's really very composed. I don't think she looks too rehearsed. We know that she has probably had many pre-trial interviews, not only with the attorneys on both sides and depositions, but her testimony that would have led to this, also her police statement. So it's not the first time that she's talked about what happened on her birthday, but this is the first time since then on her birthday that she's had to tell people in an open room and with a jury staring at her. So let me read some of this. She's very clear and concise. Yes, I believe so. A lot of thumbs up over here. Good things that she's still alive. I agree with you. She's lucky to be alive. And, you know, so right there, you're telling me that she's believable. And that's all that matters to the state, right? In their case, she's just very believable. She's very calm. But we're going to watch part of the cross-examination with her as well. So let's jump back into some of this testimony.
Yes, and I'm screaming and trying to defend myself physically. So I think I bit his forearm at one point, trying to, that would have been his right forearm. And then I was also squeezing his testicles with so I had my right hand trying to squeeze his testicles to get him to get off of me.
Okay. And was that, when you were doing those things, was that before or after he calmed down, as you just said?
That was before he calmed down.
Okay. So what happened, you said, after the defendant calmed down?
Oh, well, it felt like he calmed down because it looked like he took a deep breath. And again, I was screaming, and so he's covering my mouth and stuff. And then we had this moment of like, it seems like he takes a deep breath. And then he just starts hitting my face and my head with a rock.
Did you see where the defendant got the rock from?
I didn't see where he got it from, but like spatially, he was like reaching up around this area of my head. So my impression was that there was a rock on the ground near my head that he was able to grab.
Were you just holding your hand around the left side of your head?
Yes. Sorry.
When the defendant was hitting you with the rock, did you say anything?
I just started screaming because in my mind, he was trying to knock me unconscious to get to be able to drag me over the edge. So I just was screaming then as much as I could.
Did the defendant respond to what you were screaming?
No.
Did anybody other than the defendant respond to what you were screaming?
Yes. So I'm screaming, and I do think I was saying something like, please help. He's trying to kill me. You know, I'm hoping somebody can kind of hear that. And I, at some point, hear a woman's voice say, we're here. We're calling 911. We're here. We're calling 911.
Okay. So after you hear that woman's voice, what happens?
He just kind of like, Gerhardt just kind of froze and knelt back away from me. And I just crawled away really slowly. And again, he seemed just frozen. And then I was yelling to the voices I heard, are you still there? Are you still there? Don't leave me. And I couldn't hear anybody calling anything back. So I just kept crab walking away. Like I'm on my butt, kind of like scooting. And I just kept going and got to like a lower part of the trail. The women were down there, and one of them was on the phone with emergency personnel.
As you crab walked away, did the defendant follow you?
No.
So as you crab walked away, did you see what the defendant did?
He just, like I said, he seemed frozen. He just kind of stood up and was staring. And then I didn't see where he went after that. He didn't follow me when I went down to those women.
What happened when you got to the two women?
When I got to them, we were just trying to figure out how to get out of there as quickly as we could. And so they tried to stand me up to see if we could walk down with me kind of draped over them to get through, but I couldn't stand. Excuse me. That was just like an unstable. So one of them went behind me and was kind of sweeping to make sure he wasn't coming after us, visually scanning to make sure he wasn't coming after us. And then the other one was in front leading us. And one of the women had like a large metal water bottle, and she had that in her hand, and she was like, "This is the only weapon I have." But and then I crab walked or kind of scooted down the whole trail with them on kind of either part to try to keep us safe.
After this happened, where was your phone?
My phone and my bag were still with Gerhardt.
Still with the defendant?
Yes.
So does that include your purse that you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. Arielle, I'm gonna take a step back.
Okay.
There's something you mentioned earlier about a hard season. Were you having any marital problems before this happened on March 24th, 2025?
Yes, we were.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there so that we can talk about this. So they're calling it a hard season, the alleged emotional affair. But listen to this testimony really, really carefully, because then you can contrast it when we talk about the cross-examination and how much of a big deal they make about it and what was or what wasn't done. And remember, she's under oath, but he'll also have the opportunity to testify, and he really needs to in this case. Usually it's better for a defendant not to take the stand, but he really needs to explain away a lot of his actions and how this wasn't any sort of premeditated attempted murder. Let's continue to watch.
Sure. In December, the year prior, Gerhardt had gone through he logged into my WhatsApp account and saw that I was deleting text messages between a coworker and I, and he got upset about that.
When in December did this happen?
This was the beginning of December.
And when you say logged into your WhatsApp account, how does that work? What is it? First of all, what is a WhatsApp account?
WhatsApp is a text messaging app.
Okay. And you described the defendant logging in. Do you know how that works?
Actually, not. I don't know how that worked.
Did the defendant ever confront you about this?
Yes, he did. My impression is that he knew about it for a few days and then confronted me about it a little bit later.
Okay. And how did that confrontation happen?
Well, we were on vacation, and he came into our hotel room and asked for my cell phone, and then came back in a little bit later and told me, I see what's on WhatsApp. And he was really angry, very upset.
Okay, you say angry, upset. Can you describe what he said to you?
Yeah, called me a lying bitch, you're a whore. How could you do this sort of thing?
Okay. Who were you messaging with on WhatsApp that caused this confrontation?
It was a coworker from Terra Power. His name is Jeff Miller.
Okay, and you said Jeff Miller also works at Terra Power.
That's right.
Is Terra Power on Maui?
No.
Okay, where is Terra Power located?
It's headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, outside of Seattle.
Do you work in person or do you work remote?
I work remotely.
So who is Jeffrey Miller to you?
He's a coworker and a friend.
Did you ever have sex with Jeffrey Miller?
No.
in these WhatsApp messages, did you ever send or receive sexual photos with Jeffrey Miller?
No,
Did you discuss sex at all in the messages?
no,
In these messages, did you flirt with Jeffrey Miller?
yes, some of them are flirty in nature.
And when the defendant confronted you in December about these messages, how did you react?
I was apologetic. He was obviously hurt, and I was really committed to my marriage and my husband, and so we agreed to work through it and try to, kind of rebuild, because I had definitely broken his trust and could tell he was hurt.
As a couple, how did you and the defendant characterize these WhatsApp messages?
It felt like an affair to him, so we called it an emotional affair.
Did you say emotional affair?
Emotional affair is the word, yeah.
After the defendant confronted you and called you a lying bitch and a whore, did the defendant make any demands about your job?
A little bit. I wasn't supposed to be like in any kind of one-on-one work situation with Jeff. No emails or anything like that.
All right. Can you describe a little bit about what that was like, or what the defendant asked you to do?
Well, it was really just anytime there was going to be a meeting, there had to be another person there as well. And then Gerhardt would kind of go through my stuff at the end of the day to see, what I was doing. So if I was sending emails or who I was meeting with.
After this happened in December, did anything change with your sex life with the defendant?
At the time, Gerhardt kind of expected to have sex every other day. And when this happened, he made it clear that if I refused to have...
No objection. Can we approach?
All right, we're going to hit the pause button right there so that we can kind of talk about this a little bit more. So here you have it. The case laid out against the anesthesiologist, Dr. Gerhardt Konig. 1 year ago today, he allegedly planned a romantic relationship trip with his wife for her birthday, because today is her birthday. And allegedly, he had planned to murder her, according to the state of Hawaii. So if you're just joining us right now, the state's star witness is on the stand, right? And it's going to be a he said, she said sort of case, where you're either going to believe this witness and convict him or not, because he's on trial right now for attempted second-degree murder. The high penalty there is life in prison, with or without the possibility of parole. That'll be decided later, but that's if he's convicted. And so far, she's presenting very well. Very cool, calm, collected, even when she's staring down her estranged husband, who she says tried to kill her over what she described as an emotional affair. So let's watch together how her testimony ends. Let's jump back in.
You mentioned?
That's correct, yes.
When you got back to Maui, did you find anything relevant in your house to what happened?
Yes. A few days later, I found Gerhardt's work bag in our closet.
Okay. And what did you find that was relevant about the work bag?
I just unzipped it and I could see syringes and medication were in there.
How did you react to finding the bag of medical supplies?
I was surprised. I called an attorney and then got in touch with the police to have them come get it, just in case it was relevant.
Did the police eventually come and collect the bag?
They did, yes. 2 evidence specialists came to take it.
And between the time that you saw the medical supplies in the defendant's work bag to the time that the police came to collect them from your house, did you tamper with, alter, substitute, or destroy any of the items in that bag?
No.
And could you describe the bag for us, just the physical bag?
Sure. It's a black backpack, but it has like a one shoulder strap. It's not a full backpack.
Other than the bag, did the police recover anything else from your house on Maui?
They did. They also took his laptop computer.
Where was the defendant's laptop before the police recovered it?
It was on his desk at our house.
Do you know the login information for that laptop?
I do not know.
Do you have a computer account on that laptop?
No.
From the time that you got back to your house on Maui to the time that the police recovered that laptop, did you do anything at all with the laptop?
No.
Now, you talked about your treatment on Oahu so far. Did you have any sort of medical treatment after you got back to Maui?
I did. I had a lot of wound care for, I had a bunch of stitches through my scalp. I had a lot of wound care for that. And then I had some treatment for a distal fracture of my thumb.
Were you able to work after this happened?
No, I was out of work full-time for maybe 4 weeks, something like that. And then I was on light duty for a few weeks after that. And then ongoing physical therapy for vertigo and for just kind of fatigue and being able to sit at the computer and do I work on my computer screen all day. So did physical therapy to kind of strengthen the ability to do that.
How long before you were fully recovered, just in terms of able to work a normal work day?
Maybe between 2 and 3 months.
Do you have any visible long-term effects from the injuries from March 24, 2025?
Yes, I have scarring on my scalp and my face.
And Arielle, could you show everybody in the courtroom the scar on your scalp?
Sure.
And I want the record to reflect the witness is just pulled her bangs up on the left side of her head to display a scar.
Yes.
Arielle, how do you normally cover that scar?
Until
Objection irrelevant. Sustain.
All right, let's pause it right there because that was a good move by the defense attorney for really not allowing her to elaborate on the care and maybe even break the flow here of her talking about her injuries. And these injuries are key, right? Because he's facing alleged second-degree murder, but it was an alleged assault on his wife. And we've already heard testimony from the women that came to her rescue that helped get her off of the trail and helped call 911. And their testimony says that they saw the bloody rock and her underneath her husband. And now you have this testimony from the alleged victim saying that she was beaten by the rock by her husband. So right there is the connection with the assault and that charge.
Does your hair grow in the area where that scar
Same
is?
objection, Your Honor.
no, my hair does not grow there.
Arielle, on March 24, 2025, did you give the defendant permission to try and push you off the cliff?
No, I did not.
Did you give the defendant permission to try and inject you with the syringe?
No, I did not.
Did you give the defendant permission to hit you with that rock?
No, I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Keep going. Recess? We have a lot to set up. Maybe this might be a good time for a morning recess.
I think so. Let's take our first morning recess, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, and then they go to break. I mean, let me know in the chat what you think about her testimony. I think that she was really calm. She was put together. She told a cohesive story or a line of events. And remember, her memory is probably not going to be challenged on all of this because it only happened 1 year ago. Today is her birthday. She's testifying. She was supposed to take the stand as the star witness last Friday, but there were evidentiary issues. There were arguments outside the presence of the jury. Today, we are in day 3 of this trial against the good doctor there, the anesthesiologist in Hawaii, accused of plotting to kill his wife over jealousy and suspecting that she was having an affair. So in direct examination, she was kind of downplaying it and admitting to maybe text messages, some that were flirty, but he lived on the mainland, the lower 48 in Washington State, where she lived on the islands of Hawaii. Okay, so let me do this. Let me read some of the chat. All right, she was so brave taking the stand. Yeah, I mean, and also you have to think that the jury is pretty close to her. And, these are just a group of strangers, but this is not the first time that she's shared the story. She would have told it to officers, investigators. She would have testified to this possibly in the pretrial hearings. And then it would have been, maybe even sitting down with the attorneys. I'm not sure how much pretrial prep that she had, but she should have had some. These are the line of questions that are going to be asked of you. Just tell your story. Just tell the truth. Here's what they may ask you in cross-examination. So she's prepared for it, and she's a pretty smart lady. So let's jump in there and watch the cross together.
I want to begin a little bit with this issue of Mr. Jeffrey Miller. Mr. Miller was a co-worker of yours, yes?
That's right.
And was he a senior vice president at the company that you worked for?
Not at the time, no.
At the time, what was his position? And when at the time, I mean in November, December of 2024. What was his position at TerraPower at the time?
A director, senior director, something like that.
Senior director. Okay. Now, you understood Mr. Miller was also married, yes?
Yes,
You were married at the time, yes?
that's right.
You indicated under oath today that after the discovery of these communications with you and Mr. Miller, you and Gerhardt would refer what had happened between the two of you. You would refer to it as an emotional affair, correct?
That's right.
All right. In fact, there were times in communications where he referred to it as a secret affair, yes?
When you say he, you mean Gerhardt?
Yes.
I don't recall, but potentially.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. And in fact, in the counseling sessions that you guys had, it was whatever was going on with Mr. Miller was referred to as emotional infidelity at times, yes?
As far as I can recall, yes.
Okay. Now, emotional affair, secret affair, emotional infidelity. When you were interviewed by the detective in this case, following this incident we're all talking about, you were asked by the detective about your relationship with Mr. Miller, yes?
Yes, sir.
And you understood that he was investigating this case and he expected you to be honest and truthful, correct?
That's right.
And he asked you whether or not you had an affair with Mr. Miller, and your response to the detective was no, that you didn't have an affair, correct?
Based on,
My question, ma'am, is was your answer to his question, when he asked you a very specific question, did you have an affair? Your answer with Mr. Miller, your answer was no, correct?
that's correct.
You described it to the detective simply as some flirty text messages with a coworker, correct?
That's what it was, sir.
That's what it was, according to you, right?
That's right.
Now, after the discovery of these messages and what was going on with you and Mr. Miller, there were times when you and Gerhardt would communicate about the situation by text messages between the two of you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it true that on December 9th, 2024, Gerhardt sent you a text that said, you engaged and continued an elaborate secret affair instead of coming to me asking to work on our relationship. You remember him sending you that text?
Sir, objection here, Assistant.
It's impeachment, Your Honor. She said there was no affair.
Uh,
I can.
All right, well, they take that break as they go to sidebar. This is a good time for me to jump in and kind of walk you through what I've noticed. First off, she's holding herself really well under this cross-examination, right? She has really good composure. She hasn't changed in her tone. She's still very believable, and she's just answering yes or no. So clearly, she's coming across well to this jury, and she's having to answer some uncomfortable things, not only about the alleged affair, but the incident at question that happened on her birthday 1 year ago. So let me know in the chat what you think. Let me get to that right now. She's so brave. A lot of people are writing that, and I agree. I hope that she has a victim's right advocate with her in the courtroom, maybe even during these break moments that she's able to just stand with. She can't talk about the case, but she can stand with them, and then she has someone supporting her through this very emotional time and really disturbing recollection of events. Let's see how this guy is holding up and what he's doing. I noticed that part of the testimony, he was looking at her on the stand. Other parts, he was just kind of looking down. Now he's maybe assisting counsel, which is what he's supposed to be doing, helping in his own defense. But let's get back to what they were talking about after.
Your response to that text was, if anything, I learned how stupid it was this time and know how to make sure it doesn't happen again. That was what you responded. That was your response to him confronting you and saying you engaged in a secret affair. You said, I learned how stupid it was and I know how to make sure it doesn't happen again, correct?
It felt like an affair to Gerhardt, and that's how we were treating it in our marriage.
Ma'am, can you listen to my question?
Sure.
Okay, my question is about the text message. Isn't it true in a text message, I'm not asking you why you said what you said, in a text message, when Gerhardt accused you of engaging and continuing an elaborate secret affair, your response was, if anything, I learned how stupid it was this time and know how to make sure it doesn't happen again. My only question is, do you recall sending that response to him when he accused you of being in a secret affair?
Yes.
You didn't say to him, it was just flirty text messages, don't worry. He said it was stupid of me, it won't happen again, correct?
Because when I did that, we would start to argue. So you're right.
And when you said in your text message, it won't, I know how to make sure it doesn't happen again, that was in reference to the elaborate secret affair that he was referencing, yes?
To breaking his trust, yes.
Another thing that happened after the discovery of your relationship with Mr. Miller, another thing that happened is, as you talked today about working through this in January and February. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And another thing that happened to help you guys work through this is you guys started listening to audio self-help books. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
One of the audio books that you purchased and listened to was entitled How to Help Your Spouse Heal from Your Affair. You remember purchasing and listening to that audio book?
I do remember that, yes.
You took the time to purchase it and listen to it, and that was the title of it, How to Help My Spouse Heal from My Affair, as in your affair, correct?
That's correct.
Leading up to December 2024, ma'am, prior to the discovery of your communications with Mr. Miller, you were trying to hide the extent of your relationship with Mr. Miller from your husband, correct?
That's right.
To conceal the substance of your communications and the extent of your relationship with Mr. Miller from your husband leading up to December 2024, you were purposefully deleting your messages to and from Mr. Miller on your phone, correct?
I was deleting messages on my phone. That's correct.
Yeah, so Gerhardt wouldn't see them, right?
That's right.
Okay, so let's pause the testimony right there. I know a lot of you in the chat, you're saying, what is going on? Well, the defense attorney, in my opinion, is doing a good job. I don't think he's coming across too hard. That's with an alleged victim, sometimes you run the risk of really turning off the jury if you're just really too rough and in the beginning. So I think that, he still needs to be firm and try to make points for the defense strategy. And the defense strategy, what is it? I see a few of you in the chat asking what that is. I know from the pre-trial hearings that we were covering early on, his defense was that he was also dealing with self-defense and that she was attacking him, is what some of that was early on. Whether or not that's changed, I'm not quite sure. But it'll be interesting to see what he testifies to, because he's got to take the stand, right? He has to get up there and talk to this jury and explain away his what his events are from that day. Otherwise, if you believe this alleged victim, you're done. You're completely done, because right now the state has evidence of an assault. They have the injury. They're going to show the injuries. They showed some of the wounds after she was treated. They have the witnesses saying that there's a bloody rock, that he's on her, and all of that sort of thing. So, I mean, there's some work to be done by this defense attorney and by this defense team. So let's see. Let's jump ahead a little bit, because I think that this line of questioning goes on for quite some time in establishing the emotional affair.
May we publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Mr. Dirks, if you can please go to 12:1. First of all, this goes on for pages and pages and pages, correct?
Yes, it's over months.
Excuse me?
It looks like it's over months, but yes,
But this is all between you and Mr. Miller, correct?
Yeah.
Your coworker, right?
that's right.
Let's go to 12:1, please. Mr. Dirks, let me know when we're there. I think it's the bottom of 1908. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Can we blow up the bottom section, please? Okay. Is it possible to make it bigger?
No, not really.
Shucks. Okay. Ma'am, I'm gonna read this to you, and can you see it on the screen there?
May I have a copy?
Oh, sure. It's probably a good idea. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll turn to 1908.
Okay, you can kind of read ahead there.
So the day starts off on
I mean,
this
I'm not
Sunday.
sure if there's much to
Mr. Miller
this,
texts you,
these
and-
messages over months of.
There's timestamps on here, but this was. During this time period, leading up to December 2024, you and Mr. Miller would share photos of yourselves, both from the past and the present, and also during certain activities that you were engaged in, yes?
Occasionally, yes.
And, Your Honor, may I approach with D-124?
Yes.
Now, I'm gonna show you D-124. If you can look through that, and I'm gonna ask you again if that looks to you to be messages between you and Mr. Miller, and also photos that you guys would send to each other. And let me know when you're ready.
This is also a strategy by some trial lawyers that I've seen, by defense attorneys, to bring it up to the table, kind of have some pauses in there and make it more dramatic than it is or isn't, rather than just putting it up on the Elmo,
sir.
right? And then reading it in
That appears
court
to
or
be
reading
very
it
accurate
together.
descriptions of
Because
messages
now
you guys would send to each
you're
other.
That's
like,
right.
what's in
Yeah,
that
I move to
document?
admit
What's in it? Like the suspense is building.
D-124.
No objection. Will be marked for identification as Exhibit D-124 is received as evidence.
Could we please publish and start on page P2250? Okay, let's blow up that picture at the top there, please. You want a copy? I'll give you.
Yes, please.
Which is what they could have done
Yeah, approach
from the beginning.
you like this one?
Oh, yeah, I'll take this drop. Thank you. Okay, so this is a picture Mr. Miller sent to you one of my two BFFs. This was in Vegas. And then you looks like you attached a heart emoji to it. Yes?
That's a reaction, yes.
Let me just pause it right there. Why does every case have to go through Vegas? There's always a Vegas connection somehow. I don't know why, but I just kind of find that in almost every case that I cover. And I know some of you in the chat are watching from Vegas. So hello from Sin City. Thank you for hitting subscribe and liking the channel. Hey, we're bringing the true crime family back together, right? And I love discussions like this. Thank you for jumping into the chat. We are hitting some hot moments of this trial with this star witness on the stand. We have Arielle Konig, who is accusing her husband of attacking her on her birthday 1 year ago and attempting to kill her, according to her. Gerhardt Konig is an anesthesiologist on trial, and he's not out on bail. So he is in custody, and there's not a lot of eye contact between these two. We're watching the cross-examination right now. Let's jump back in.
You send this to him, not Gerhardt, correct?
I don't recall what I said to Gerhardt at the time.
All right. Let's go to the next page, please. Okay, let's blow that up. And is that you in the photo?
Yes, it is, sir.
And you send that to Mr. Miller, yes?
Correct.
And what is it? What is pre-ICB? What is ICB?
From context, I assume that's Irish car bomb. It's the
And
name
what-
of the shot.
What is Irish car bomb?
It's a drink, a shot.
And you send this to Mr. Miller on the text, correct?
That's correct.
All right, we can take that down. And I'll retrieve that from you now.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Okay, so what are you thinking right now? I think that, there's a lot of smoke right now with the defense. I'm not sure where they're going. I'm not sure if they're making any points with this jury there in Hawaii. She's holding it together really well. I've noticed her eye contact through much of her testimony, not looking at that defendant, not looking at her estranged husband, who she says tried to kill her with either whatever was in that syringe or throwing her off of a cliff after confessing his love for this birthday trip for her. But I am noticing that she's looking out in the gallery. So who is she looking at? So hopefully she has some family members, maybe her parents or somebody close to her that she's able to focus on during some of these moments. I'm not noticing her looking in any one direction like you would a jury box. But I bet you that this jury there in Hawaii, they're paying close attention. And by all accounts, I think that she's doing a fantastic job. Let me know if you believe her story, though, in the comments. But part of the credibility, right, is just answering what's good and what's bad for you, but just stating the facts and trying to remain level-headed. And this is definitely a situation where you could have a witness on the stand that breaks down in tears, and then there has to be a lot of breaks because you really shouldn't testify because that kind of puts emotional onto the jury. But there would be objections to that and that sort of thing. But I think that she's doing a fantastic job. Let's jump back in a little later.
So now we're heading into March and going through counseling, trying to work through it. And your birthday's coming up, yes?
Yes, sir.
And ma'am, the concept of going on a staycation to Oahu for your birthday, it was actually your idea, yes?
No, I didn't want to travel. I was saying I wanted to stay with the kids, but I did say Oahu would be fun sometime. And he was like, well, let's go to Oahu.
Okay, so you remember being interviewed by the detective in this case after the incident?
Yes, sir.
You remember being asked by the detective, who planned this trip? And you remember your response was, he planned the trip. He was kind of asking what I wanted to do for my birthday. And I said, like, sometime I want to go to Oahu. It doesn't need to be now. Remember saying that to the detective?
That sounds accurate. Yes, sir.
So at least that's what my question was. The concept of going to Oahu was something that you brought up, right? And you said, it doesn't need to be now, but I've always wanted to go there on a staycation.
Okay, right there. A win for the defense. That is big, 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 because they're kind of narrowing down what the premeditation was. So if the alleged victim brought up the fact that, hey, I kind of want to go to Oahu, and he can get that into the testimony and to her story, then it's not really like this doctor had a death wish for more than a few moments, if that's what the state wants to paint. But allegedly they were saying that he planned the trip, lured her there after they were having these problems, brought the syringes with him as a backup, and then planned on her taking to this trail where he could throw her off by saying, I don't know, that she slipped during a selfie situation. But now this kind of chips away at that, right? So that's what the defense, that's all that they can try to do at this point, is just kind of chip away, not only at her credibility, but also the overall picture that the prosecutors painted during their opening statement.
It doesn't need to be now. And he said, oh, let's go, right?
Sure, yes.
Okay. It's not like out of the blue he said, hey, we're going on this trip. It's going to be on Oahu. This is what's happening. You raised the concept, yes?
I raised the concept of wanting to go to Oahu at some point. Yes, sir, that's correct.
In response to him asking what you wanted to do for your birthday, right?
Potentially, I don't recall that.
What, is that what you told the detective?
I think you and I are interpreting that differently.
I'm not asking about interpretation. I'm asking about the words you use
Objection
to the
argument.
detective.
Sustain? Can I get the exhibit page in line?
Sure. This is exhibit 107, page 5, lines 13 through 15, D107. Ma'am, when the detective asked you who planned this trip, your response was, he planned the trip. He was kind of asking what I wanted to do for my birthday. And I said, sometime I want to go to Oahu, but it doesn't need to be now. That's just the words you said to the
Yes,
detective.
you and I agree on that. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned the hike, and I think you said that you only learned about the hike the night before, once you were already on the trip. Is that right?
About which specific hike we went on.
Okay, but you knew you were going to go on a hike, right?
We didn't have, aside from having planned to do the spa and shop around, a hike was kind of up in the air. I don't know that we had, before leaving Maui, definitively settled on going on a hike, sir.
Yeah, but the concept of going on a hike came up. That's why you brought stuff, shoes and clothes to go hiking, right?
Yes, like I said.
And in fact, hiking, it was not unusual for you guys to go on hikes. That's something you guys did from time to time, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, may I approach with exhibits D158, D160, and D154?
Yes.
All right. So while they're talking about those exhibits that they'll admit into evidence, I see a lot of people have just joined. So thank you for joining. We are doing some of the highlights of some of the biggest moments of this trial. This is make or break for the big trial that's taking place in Hawaii. This is what everyone in true crime is talking about. This is the trial of the nation right now, I believe. So this is the case against the good doctor, the anesthesiologist, Dr. Gerhardt Konig. And he is alleged to have lured his wife on vacation for her birthday. Then eventually they go on this hike where she claims that he was fighting with her. She felt for her life, that he may have been trying to throw her off the cliff during some sort of a selfie that was being taken. And then she saw him grip a syringe in his hand, and they two were fighting. He grabs a rock and injures her. She has already shown those injuries to this jury. There has already been testimony from eyewitnesses who say that they rescued her and got her down and got her to safety, and that she was injured and with blood. And we've also heard from some police officers and first responders. So Gerhardt Konig is charged with second-degree attempted murder for the alleged assault of his wife. She's testifying right now. And again, this happened 1 year ago today on her birthday. She was supposed to testify last Friday, but there was arguments outside the presence of the jury, and her key testimony was postponed to today. The time difference, that's the reason why she's testifying in the afternoon, but she's first out the gate. So let's go back in for a little bit longer, and we can talk about more of her testimony.
And you said today that you're at home and you see his work bag and you open it and you say under oath today to this jury, the words you used was, I was surprised. I was surprised to see the syringes and vials, right? That's what you said today, right?
Yes, sir.
You were aware that work bag was something he kept with him at home and would take to and from the hospital every day. You were aware of that before this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, you were aware that he would bring syringes and vial, lidocaine and other stuff and have it at home in case of emergencies, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You knew that before you discovered this work bag, correct?
Yes, sir.
The detective asked you, have you ever seen him bring home any type of medications or syringes for work prior to this? And you said, yeah. You told the detective you knew about it, right?
He had brought things home from work before. The surprise was that the bag was full and seemed to have a lot of stuff in it. I didn't realize the volume or the regularity with which that occurred.
The detective asked you about the work bag and you said it was something he would take to and from work every day, right?
Yes, sir.
The first call you make upon this discovery is not to the police, not to the prosecutors, but to your attorney, correct?
That's correct, sir.
This is 3 days later, right? The 27th of March, 2025, correct?
That's correct, on a Thursday.
By then you had an attorney, yes?
Yes, sir.
First call you make is to your attorney. He says, we're going to introduce this into the case. And he calls the police, correct?
I'm not sure. He says it's relevant. We need to have the police come get it. It's probably relevant.
You discharged from the hospital on March 25th and you return to Maui and you continue your care, correct?
That's right, sir.
And we mentioned by the March 27th, you had an attorney, yes?
Yes, sir.
On March 31st, you go to see your primary care doctor on Maui, Dr. Joanna Yun, correct? Or Yun, correct?
That sounds right. The date, I'm not certain of, but thereabouts, for sure.
She was your primary care doctor, yes?
Yes, for
You had
sure.
a doctor-patient relationship with her from before this incident, correct?
Yes, sir.
She examines you, discusses your symptoms and during that visit, correct?
Yes, sir.
She comes up with could you actually access that was with Kaiser, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you access your Kaiser records at that time online?
I'm sure I could. Yes, sir.
She comes up with a diagnosis list for the visit. And then the next day on April 1st, you email her and you ask her, hey, doctor, do you mind adding traumatic brain injury to your diagnosis list?
Objection, rule of completeness.
Sustained.
I'm going to get to the second part of it. We'll read the exact email. Isn't it true you emailed Dr. Yun? Hi, Dr. Yun, on April 1st, 10 a.m., 10:03 a.m. Would you mind adding either traumatic brain injury or concussion to the diagnosis notes from my appointment on March 31st? I want to make sure the documentation is consistent between my care at Queens and back on Maui. Do you remember emailing that to your primary care physician on April 1st, about a week after this incident?
Yes, sir.
She had not included that on her diagnosis list after your visit, correct? Traumatic brain injury or concussion, correct?
Correct. That's the
I'm
purpose of
sorry,
the
I
email.
apologize. She had not added traumatic brain injury to her diagnosis list, correct?
For her notes for the 31st, that's correct.
You had an attorney by March 27th, correct?
Yes, sir.
April 1st, you emailing your doctor saying, can you please add traumatic brain injury to my diagnosis, correct?
Correction rule of completeness.
Partially what you emailed your doctor was, can you add traumatic brain injury to my diagnosis? Yes?
Assistant.
Okay, I'll read the whole email. You said to your doctor, would you mind adding either traumatic brain injury or concussion to the diagnosis note from my appointment on March 31st? I want to make sure the documentation is consistent between my care at Queens and back here on Maui. That's what you told her, right? That's what you emailed her, right?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that nowhere in your Queens records does it ever say traumatic brain injury? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware. Sure.
Did you review your Queens records before you emailed that to Dr. Yoon?
When I met with Dr. Yoon on the
Ma'am,
31st,
my question is, did you review your Queens records from your stay at Queens before you emailed Dr. Yoon on April 1st saying you want to make sure the documentation is consistent between my care at Queens and back here on Maui? Did you review your records at Queens before you sent that email?
I don't recall, sir.
Ma'am, follow.
I hit the pause button right there. I mean, first off, I don't see what the big deal is. If I'm a juror and I'm hearing the questioning about like the records and being you wanted them to include this traumatic brain injury. Okay, well maybe that diagnosis happened by a different person. Maybe it happened at a different time. Maybe you need it spelled out in the document. Maybe your doctor told you that you had that, but they didn't include it. We've all been there too, perhaps. And maybe she needs it because of a workman's comp situation. Maybe she needs it for her insurance claims. We don't know, but maybe that'll be cleaned up on the redirect if there is any on this line of questioning. I see some people in the chat. Let's really keep this respectful. I really appreciate you guys being here. She's an alleged victim in all of this, alleged of domestic violence. And if I see things in the chat, I'm going to have to put you in a timeout. But I really appreciate you guys being here and watching it with me, because this is just that fascinating case that is playing out there in the state of Hawaii. Let's watch more of it together.
The
Let
criminal
me
case.
rephrase.
Thank you.
Do you recall last week, the day this trial started, you signed off on a document that was submitted to family court called a motion to set. You remember that?
Yes, sir. I remember signing the
And,
motion to
and
set.
in that motion, well, you signed it and adopted it as true. Remember
Yes,
that?
sir.
And that motion details the allegations in this case and then states that you should get full custody of the kids, correct?
Yes, sir.
That the father should not have any contact with the kids due to a finding of family violence, yes?
Consistent with previous ruling, yes.
That you should keep your retirement and get half of his, right?
Yes, sir.
That you should keep the house, right?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we've been going for a while. I may be almost done, but I'd like to take the lunch break to double check through all my exhibits and notes. Since we're off record.
Okay, so there you have it, the bulk of her testimony. So this defense attorney says that he's nearing the end of his cross-examination. What do you think about that cross-examination? I think that he came across pretty good. I think that there was some points that he was trying to make that maybe didn't land with this jury. I like how the presentation of evidence in this case, even with the state's star witness, doesn't drag on and on and on. Sure, she's been on the stand for a couple hours, but I mean, we've covered trials together, right? Where we've seen witnesses on the stand for several days, especially when it's the state's star witness or the alleged victim in all of this. Her presentation is very good. I think that she recalls what is being asked of her. She's been very direct in her answers. She's been very composed, and she seems truthful. I mean, I really do think that. And I noticed that, this is probably very difficult for her too, as it would be anybody, right? And she's not wanting to look over at the defendant, her estranged husband, who she has a restraining order against. Remember, these two have kids together. They were going through a rough time. They were trying to patch things up. But it's just a tragic situation, especially when you think about the children, because their dad is behind bars right now, possibly for the rest of his life. There's going to be a strain in custody and situation there, whatever plays out. Beyond this, we always have to remember that beyond the legal part of the story, it continues, and it just makes me very sad thinking about what may have happened with the children. All right. I think that that's going to wrap up my coverage of this. I'm going to be talking about it more throughout the week. Let me know if you would like to discuss this case further. But thank you for telling your friends about the new True Crime channel, True Crime and Justice with Matt Johnson. Thank you for being a Cordy that is a true crime family member. We're bringing the band back together, and I have a lot of ideas and a lot of cool cases to share with you. So again, thank you for being here today, and please hit subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Bye, everybody.